This is Texans TV. Texans Extra Points is sponsored by Community Coffee, strong as our roots, by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by your Houston area Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas, and by Emoji, the official business bank of the Houston Texans.
And the Texans are rolling. Yes, 2 games in a row is a roll around here. And we're going to roll tonight on Texans Extra Points. My name is Drew Dougherty. I'm your host. Got some heavy hitters in ND Kalu, a veteran of 10-plus years in the NFL, and Marc Vandermeer, voice of the Houston Texans. This is fun. You ready for some more fun?
Let's do it.
More fun.
Let's go. Let's go. 3 in a row.
3 in a row. But before we do, we got to get some quick hits out of the way. That's kind of like a table of contents for this show because a little bit later on, we've got keys to a Texans victory over Atlanta. Plus, we have to check out a player to watch or two from each of us in the game against the Falcons. And we're going one-on-one with Captain Jalen Pitre. It's going to be fun, as well as the other stuff we do, which is, well, get ready offensively for what this team has in store. And we also have a telestrator. You won't want to miss that. But offensively, let's start with you. We're going to do the complete this sentence that we always do at the start of every show.
All right.
4 games in, I'm most impressed with C.J. Stroud's
leadership.
Oh.
I know you want me to say passing, accuracy, big playability. We know he has that. But to see the leadership, the guy was voted as a captain from his teammates, from his peers, but then you see it in the games. You see when the wide receivers drop a ball, he's the first one there to dap them up and give them encouragement. So I'm going to say leadership.
I like that. How about you, Mark?
I'm going to say the passing. I'm just going to go old school here, meat and potatoes. The guy is slinging it, right? I am very excited about this. You look at the historic start that he has compared to other rookies in their first 4 games, and now you're looking at compared to other veterans in the start of a season, period, with the no picks, the touchdown passes, the passer rating. He is really growing week to week. You don't know where it's going to go. How high is the ceiling? I don't know, but I'm here for it. We're really excited.
All right, the number is 2.5. Does he go over or under that this weekend throwing touchdowns? Does he have 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns? What's he get?
All right, I'm going to say it's 2, another 2, because somebody's going to get a rushing touchdown, or maybe Devin Singletary throws another touchdown pass. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they need to score this week. You just never know how good Atlanta's going to be. I know we're going to get to the defense, but they've got a lot of weapons, and they desperately need this game, and I think the Texans have to put a bunch of points on the board. I know, a bunch of points, that sounds kind of vague. A lot of points, like 24 plus to win this football game.
They've had 30 each of the last 2 weeks. He's going on the under. You going over? You going under too?
You know what? I'm going to agree with Mark. I'm going to go under. He has 6 touchdowns on the season. That's less than 2 per game. So I'm going to stick with the numbers and say under.
All right. And just for the record, we got 2 pessimists right here when it comes to throwing the football and C.J. Stroud. Jokes. All right, let's talk about this run game. You alluded to it a moment ago, but what is different a little bit about it over the last week and a half, 2 weeks?
You see the space between you and I? Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see that in the O-line. I'm starting to see the holes that are opening up with the blocking, with the guys up front. And I don't care who you are. When you have holes and you're not getting touched until you're 1-2 yards past the line of scrimmage, it's going to bode well. And I'm starting to see bigger holes for the running back.
Yeah, and Pierce didn't always need those holes last year, but gosh, it sure helps him out when you got that type of guy running the ball.
Well, last week you started to see some of those explosive Dameon Pierce runs that we grew accustomed to last year, and I want to see more of that this week. And the complementary styles between Singletary and Pierce, really great to see. And Stroud running the ball a bit, too. That adds to the rushing total, but he doesn't need a lot, okay? But, 20 yards or so a game, a couple of runs just to get the first downs, just to get the sticks moving or get into a favorable third down situation, that's fine. He's protecting himself well. He said he could play better, so I want to see what that's going to be like. And I think the legs are a part of it. You don't want to overuse it, though.
Yeah, he's very judicious about using his legs and running with the ball. It's been a good thing. All right, this is something I want to do again. We tried it last week. We're going to do it better this week. But for 2 straight weeks, the offensive line has not allowed a sack. I know it's more than just the O-line, but let's give them their flowers. And it's going to look different this week, I'm sure, left to right. There will be some different bodies in there. But What type of floral arrangement does the offensive line deserve after the second straight week of not allowing a sack?
Well, I don't think carnations are good enough, okay? I'm going to go like a blend of roses, all right? I want some reds in there. I want some whites in there. I want, what are some of the other colors? Pinks? I don't know. A blend of roses for the offensive line. That might be too romantic, but I'll go with it.
All right, and we're not having to make up for anything here. This is like a proactive flower giving. What are you doing?
You know what I'm doing? I'm finding it offensive that you want to give offensive linemen flowers. These are offensive linemen. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them cactus. I'm going to give them cacti. What's the plural? Cacti, because when you look at offensive linemen, they don't want flowers. And cacti, they're prickly, they're tough. You don't want to touch them, just like these offensive linemen. They're tough. So I'm going to say forget the flowers, and we're going to go with the plant and give them some cacti.
Cacti grow flowers. So boom, I just beat you. But I was playing off of the kids these days. They say, instead of a compliment, it's giving someone their flowers.
We need a sponsor.
There we go. He's thinking ahead. Okay, we got to think ahead and talk about the defense, because when we come back, we're going one-on-one with Jalen Pitre, and we're also contemplating some other things on that side of the ball. Stick with us.
Defense was outstanding against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Steven Nelson, a former Steeler, has been playing his guts out for this team ever since he got here. But in 2023, he's been fantastic. This play right here is all about film study and then making a play at the end, being an athlete. Texans here are going to get the same thing the Steelers ran against the Raiders. Calvin Austin against the Raiders ran this post route. You can run a dig right in here. It's called a Mills route. Okay, it goes back to 1990 that Florida Gators ran this. And the thought is that you're going to, against middle of the field close, the safety, if there's a safety in the middle, then you read him. If he jumps on the dig, you throw the post. If he stays deep on the post, you throw the dig. But it also works against quarters too, because what happens against quarters, which is what they're playing here, quarter here, quarter here. Now, they're over here playing a half field, okay? So we won't worry too much about this, but we're worried about this. When these two routes go vertical, it turns essentially into man-to-man. So what's going to happen is this safety, Jalen Pitre, is going to take Freiermuth across the middle. When this post goes here, the Steelers are expecting this guy to beat him. But what they failed to remember is that this guy does some film study and knew exactly what this play was. So as Austin starts up, he knows this is the post. He then takes the right angle when he goes. Watch Nelson. He already knows. He's already running. He's not buying this little out, fake, and up. He's not buying that. He knows exactly what this is. That's why when he turns, he's thinking, I'm running to a spot. He runs and beats Austin to the spot, and then the play on the ball is just incredible. The play on this football is just unbelievable. I mean, Austin thinks he's got it, and Steven goes right over the top of him. I mean, this is tremendous. Then to get up and make a play after this is incredible. But if we go back and look at it again, dig, watch Pitre jump that on the post, stay on top of it. And that's the hard part, because you can see here, Steven's got outside leverage. So when this fast guy goes here, you would think, oh, he's already got a jump start. The only way you can get to that play is if you know it's coming. And Steven Nelson knew it was coming because he had seen the film of the week before, and then he just ran like you know what to go get that football. And then he turned into Dameon Pierce, started running after it. But that's what film study can do for you. Steven Nelson, knowing what play was coming, reacted properly, and then made one heck of a football play.
First down for the Houston 35. Ryan throws downfield. It's picked up. Take it to his left, 40, 45, Gibson, 50, 45 of Atlanta, cuts to the right, the 40, the 30. He's running across the 20, the 10, the 5, pick 6. Icing on the cake.
There's a little blast from the past. Tashaun Gibson's pick 6 in the fourth quarter of the last game you played against the Atlanta Falcons, which happened to be in Week 5. You blew them out back then. Drew, ND, Mark, guys, let's talk about this defense, and I'm going to begin with you. How hard is it to hold an offense to just 2 field goals in a game? And I'm not talking about any offense. Well, I'm not talking about good offenses, bad offenses. I'm talking about any offense, 2 field goals in a game.
No, it's very tough. In the NFL, most defensive rooms, they have a goal going into every game to hold the opponent to 17 points or less. That means they're going to score some touchdowns. The 2 worst teams in the NFL right now, there are 2 teams that are winless, the Bears and the Panthers. You know what they've done every single game? Score touchdowns. So it's tough to hold the team to only 2 field goals. That shows a lot with your defense.
Yeah, you only give up 6 points last week. They were both field goals, Mark. I know you've seen a lot of football around here. That was an impressive performance.
It was really impressive, and to get another one today or in the game against the Falcons would be huge, because you look at the Falcons the last 2 weeks, they've given up 7 and 6 points. And what do they got? They're under a lot of heat right now with Desmond Ritter. They do have Bijan Robinson. They have some weapons, like we said. But, man, do you have an opportunity here to go single digits again on defense? I don't know if that's true. I expect them to play really a lot better than they did in the last couple of weeks. But this defense has shown some signs. Not a good game against the Colts, but the last 2 games have been utterly terrific.
How much do you think Jimmy Ward, Jalen Pitre being back together has helped in some of that, what we saw last week?
Well, it was the first time they played together, and Pitre's clearly a playmaker. I mean, the guy ends up in the backfield. He's in the defensive backfield, the offensive backfield. He's all around the town, right? And Jimmy Ward makes plays as well, and I think the rub-off effect that he has, his veteran leadership, really helps. But don't sleep on Toa either at linebacker with the big PBU in the back of the end zone on George Pickens last week. Plays like that. I mean, they're making plays all over the place, and D'Amico has really got them to buy into the system, and it's going to continue.
Yeah, and it's a system that Will Anderson Jr. thriving in, looking really good in. What does Will Anderson Jr. alone do to an opposing offense as far as how they game plan for a game?
He's one of the few guys that you have to game plan against. He's one of the few guys where if a play calls for a tight end to block an edge rusher, you have to say, oh, that's Will Anderson, so we're going to need the running back to chip him. And what does that do? That takes your running back out of the passing route. He's one of the few guys, I would say maybe about 16 teams have that one guy where the opposing offense actually has a game plan against that one individual player.
Interesting. Okay, he just brought up how everyone is getting involved, and there's lots of different guys. Unsung defender of the Texans so far is who?
He plays on the edge. I'm not talking about Will Anderson, Jonathan Grenard.
Oh, that's a
he
good
leads
one.
the team in sacks.
Yep.
He leads the team in tackle for losses. I'm not going to say I'm surprised. The only thought was if he stays healthy, he's going to be this productive, and he's shown everything.
That's a good one. How about you?
Well, I'm not going to say Steven Nelson because I think everyone notices the picks, right? He's got 2. He's putting together a Pro Bowl campaign right now. How about Sheldon Rankins along the D-line, slowing down the running game? I know that last week Harris had the 55 yards after the break. They're going to have to work on that run defense because guess what's coming in the form of Robinson? They have 2 backs that can really hurt you, but Rankins has done a nice job for them up front.
He sure has. You know, we're going to get into Bijan Robinson and the threat he presents because the Texans well aware of what he can do. But before we do that, we're going to go to break. And before we go to break, we got to go one-on-one with Jalen Pitre. He's a captain. It's only year number 2 for him, and he's glad to be back, and the Texans are glad he's back, roaming the back end of that defense. Here is our one-on-one with Jalen. Jalen Pitre joins us now, taking on the Atlanta Falcons this week. The defense last couple weeks for the Texans has been doing some nice things. What's happening?
A lot. You know, a lot of swarming, a lot of getting to the ball, being disruptive, and yeah, just trying to make a lot of plays.
How do you maintain that momentum?
Just doing what you're supposed to do, being where you're supposed to be, and preparing the right way. Our coaches are doing a great job at preparing us for the week. It's just about trusting that and going out and executing.
It was fun talking to you after the win last week. It was a second straight wire-to-wire, just domination of a team. It was your first game back in a while. What's it like getting to be out there with Jimmy Ward, both captains, first time to play together, and you think things marinate and get better as it goes along? What was it like being with him, and what do you think it's going to be like going forward?
Oh, it was turned. Like right before we went out for the first drive, we head smacking each other like he's trying to get ready, and it's just good energy on the field. He's a good communicator, and he brings it every time he's out there. So, just having that on the field, it's always good to, have that type of energy and just to have us both just bouncing that off of each other. It was real fun to get out there with him.
Jalen Pitre, thanks so much for the time. Best of luck.
Appreciate you.
It's 1st and 10, Atlanta. Ryan back to pass. Watt gets him down this time. JJ with the sack.
You recognize that guy. He had a sack or 2 or 100 in his time as a Texan. J.J. Watt, honored last weekend in the Ring of Honor, and he had a sack against the Falcons back in 2019. Drew Dougherty, Kalu, Marc Vandermeer. Marc, voice of the Texans, let's begin with you. Bijan Robinson, oh my goodness, 2 100-yard games so far, 6 yards a carry. Probably has not gotten the ball enough this year.
I would say that that's one of the conversations they're having, because in the loss to the Jaguars in London, he still put up numbers, but they couldn't put up points, right, because of the quarterback issues, whatever. But I think that Bijan Robinson, he will be heard from early and often in this game. And then we talk about the other players they have that are, quote, positionless, right? The tight ends that can play receiver. You know, Pitts can do a lot, right? And then you look at Patterson. You look at all these weapons they have, Drew. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they try to utilize them in a week where they got to get this one. They can't lose a third game in a row, not in that division, which turns out to be a lot tougher than people think. And I know this is the first of 4 in the NFC South for the Houston Texans, so we're going to see.
No doubt. And hey, as a defensive lineman, what's it like when you got to encounter a running back like Bijan Robinson? It's a talented guy.
Talented guy, big, strong guy. Regardless of whether you play D-line, linebacker, the thought is you have to get multiple hats on a guy like Bijan Robinson. You're not going to see too many individuals tackle him, so you have to pursue to him and have multiple guys around him.
Swarm.
Swarm pursuit.
Swarm.
How do you best rattle Desmond Ritter? What do you do?
You sack him. You know, you talk about the losses. You talk about how they looked against Detroit. Detroit had 7 sacks against Desmond Ritter. Then last week they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Josh Allen alone had 3 sacks. So when you get in his face, when you pressure him, when you sack him, then you really have a chance to beat Atlanta.
You know, the day after the game, Arthur Smith, head coach of the Falcons, had his normal day after press conference. The first 15 questions in that presser were basically some variation of, are you guys going to bench Desmond Ritter?
Right.
They're dealing with a lot there. Ritter is a guy who's embattled, so what do you do?
Well, anytime you're facing a young quarterback, which he still is one, it's year 2, but he didn't start playing until late last year. I think you got to confuse him along the D-line, and ND knows this, right? You show him different looks. You have guys pretending to blitz, then they drop back in coverage, and then it becomes a real nightmare for the quarterback. How do I handle this? And you get him off his mark, too. It's quarterback 101 as far as the defense goes. If you can get him off his launching point, you can make things happen. So try to get him rattled. Here's another one. They're back home, right? Get the crowd turned against the team.
Yes.
You get up on them by a touchdown or 2, it becomes a completely different situation for them at home. Am I talking like this about the Texans? Yes, because they have a 2-game winning streak going and they've looked really good. They can do it.
And they've done just what you're talking about the last 2 weeks. They've taken an early touchdown lead by scoring on that first drive, answering on defense, and doing all the right things there. Okay, defensively, is their secondary the best part of what they have going on there in Atlanta?
I wouldn't say so. I think up front, they've got guys who can definitely affect things against the Texans O-line, and I know we're going to see our 4th different combination out of 5 weeks here on the Texans offensive line, but hey, it feels like doesn't matter who you put in there. Bobby Slowick and company, Chris Strasser, they'll figure out a way to get it done. But in all seriousness, you got to be ready for this, because last week it was amazing what they did with the edge rushers for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now up the middle, you got some pressure, and look, Arthur Smith is working with all these former Titans, Bud Dupree, one of them. But I'm not saying he's a world beater, but he can do some damage, and the guys up front can do some. Calais Campbell, we've seen him before have some big games against the Texans. Be careful up front.
First time I ever saw Calais Campbell, I was on the field near him. He looked like he was 9 feet tall.
Yeah.
Biggest threat defensively, Atlanta?
I'm going to go Jesse Bates.
Okay.
You know, if you look up ball hawk, the definition of ball hawk, you might see his picture from this season. Already has 3 interceptions,
wow,
and he's all over the field as far as tackles. He's having an all-pro type season. So C.J. Stroud, with his 0 interceptions on the season, he needs to keep an eye on Jesse Bates and make sure he throws away from them.
Good stuff. Okay, who is your Texan to watch against the Falcons, Mark?
I'm going to say Dalton Schultz, because if I'm the Falcons, I've got to worry about Nico Collins, who's playing like a top 1 in this league right now. You want to talk about Pro Bowl campaigns in progress. He's got one going on. Let's hope this continues. Tank Dell, they see the damage that he's done to defenses. And yes, Schultz, too, he had the touchdown catch last week. But I think there's more there with Dalton Schultz. So I'm eager to see how they utilize him in this game plan.
That's a good one. How about you?
I'll go on the other side of the ball and say Henry To'oTo'o. Every week he's improving. This is a 5th-round pick playing Sam linebacker position. That's a tough position to play as a rookie, and you just see the improvement. During the preseason, there are some issues with coverage, but now during the regular season, he's starting to look like a wily vet.
2 weeks ago, the Texans were in Jacksonville. A lot of Florida guys on this team from all over, and they had lots of hometown help. Tank Dell had his family there. Denzel Perryman. Lots of different guys had big games from Florida. So I'm going with a Georgia guy this week, Jonathan Grenard.
Ooh, nice.
He had 2 sacks last week. You know he wants to show out against the hometown Falcons. All right, when we come back, we got 2 keys to a victory. This is Texans Extra Points.
Extra Points has been sponsored by Community Coffee, Strong as Our Roots, by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by Mattress Firm, the official sleep partner of the Houston Texans.
We're back for one final segment of Texans Extra Points. Drew Dougherty, ND Kalu, and Marc Vandermeer. It's that time of the show where we have 2 keys to a Texans victory. What 2 things must the Texans do, Marc, to come home from Atlanta with win number 3 of the season?
Overwhelm and attack the line of scrimmage. Like we said, swarm, right? Get all the bodies on Bijan Robinson. Go after Desmond Ritter. Send extra people if you have to. The kitchen sink. Go for it. As I said, with a young quarterback, if you get him in 3rd down and medium long and send extra people, it's going to be very tough. Blitzing veteran quarterbacks who are really good, beating it, well, that's another story, right? C.J. Stroud, not a veteran. He's good at beating the blitz. Test Ritter early. And then on offense, I just think you continue to get this ground game going. You can't expect Stroud to throw for 300 a week and be who he has been, but maybe you can. I don't know. Well, let's find out. But run the ball better. They've done it every week, so let's see the next step in improvement, running the football. Maybe Pierce gets over 100 in this one.
I like that. How about you, D?
Big play on special teams to get the crowd out of it. There's nothing that quiets a home crowd when the opposing team takes a kickoff to the house, blocks a punt, has a big punt return, and then on the defensive side, you have to slow down Bijan Robinson. This is a guy that's starting to become a star in the league. You don't want him to get his legs ahead of him early in this game.
Okay, and speaking of early, my 2 are this. Score first. Score a touchdown first, just like you've done the last couple of weeks, and like we've mentioned a few times on this show. Take the crowd out of it or turn it against that home team. So that's my first one. And then the second one, distribute the ball like you've been doing very, very evenly. Whether it's Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Robert Woods, the backs. Those are some guys who can feast, and I think one, if not many of them, are going to feast again if things go the Texans' way. All right, Marc, ND, appreciate y'all coming on. Always fun to be with you. It's always great to have you with us here on Texans Extra Points. We'll be back again, same time, same place. Until then, go Texans.